Yo, what's up, everybody? Since there hasn't been a new Friday the 13th film in over a decade at this point, I thought I'd rank all 12 movies from worst to best. I'm not a huge fan of this franchise, but I do appreciate some movies being good because, let's be honest, some of these films, they're not that great, some are straight dumpster fires. Alright, let's not waste any more time, let's get down to business. Starting this list off at number 12 is Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. Man, I always hated this movie. The acting is horrible. Most of the characters are forgivable except for Creighton Duke, who somehow knew how to stop Jason, which is absurd on its own. The plot is a mess, seeing Jason do the whole body swapping, and also the stupid moment where he shaves off another man's mustache. Plus the ending where Freddy Krueger's glove ends up grabbing Jason's mask was just a waste of time considering that crossover movie wouldn't happen until 10 years later. A terrible film where everything goes wrong and is considered by a lot of horror fans out there one of the worst movies of all time as well. Coming in at number 11 is Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. Yeah, this was a new beginning, alright, of mediocrity because there is so much wrong with this one. When you bring in fake Jason Voorhees, a lot of people are going to be pissed. Not just that though, but the acting is atrocious, the characters are forgivable, especially when it comes to Joey. He's such an annoying character going around asking other people if they want some of his chocolate. And basically, this whole movie is just one giant bore fest. Plus, there are some scenes in here that generally got me to ask myself, what in the hell were they thinking putting these moments in the movie?
I got you, didn't I? Really scared you, didn't I?
I'm gonna kick your ass, kick your ass. Come on now. Come on, everybody, sing starting.
Hey, baby. Hey, baby.
Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby.
Yeah, total nonsense. Friday the 13th became a parody in this installment. I do not like this movie whatsoever, and it's just straight up a dumpster fire. At the number 10 spot is Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Man, this one is so terrible, it forced Paramount Pictures to recon the ending in the next installment. Not only that, but for some reason they chose first-time director Rob Hedden, who also written the screenplay. The characters are boring, the storyline is one incoherent mess. Like, why would Jason go to Manhattan? And speaking of which, the title is totally misleading. New York doesn't even show up until the last 15 minutes. It's more Jason takes a cruise. There's at least one positive, that is Kane Hodder, once again doing a good job, but mostly fans of this franchise, even for those people who consider this a guilty pleasure, will admit this is a horrible movie from beginning to end. Coming in at number 9 is Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. Yeah, this one's a mixed bag for me. While the performances are decent, especially the actress that played Tina, who was an interesting character, the concept of Jason versus Carrie, while it sounded good on paper, the final product just didn't turn out better in my opinion. I don't particularly hate this film, but I'm not a big fan of it either. I'm somewhere in the middle. This was during the time where Paramount Pictures was still grasping for straws, seeing what was interesting. Plus, this film repeats the same tropes to what had came beforehand, so it's like more of the same. At least I could have some fun with this movie, and the final competition between Jason and Tina, it is cool to see. But other than that, I also would consider this another weak entry in this franchise as well. At the number 8 spot is Friday the 13th Part 3. Interesting enough, when I had first saw this a couple of years ago, I didn't think it was that bad, but on multiple rewatches since then, boy, this one has issues. The characters are shallow and lack great character development, the acting's bad, the story is not that great, and the only significant thing that happens here is that Jason gets his iconic hockey mask. When there are characters such as the bikers or even Shelly with his stupid pranks, that is one of the main reasons why this installment is ranked so low. Speaking of which, the only character that I really cared about was Chris. Would have been cool if we knew more about her backstory, but it is what it is. Still though, it's somewhat entertaining, but it doesn't offer anything all that much when it's all said and done. 2009's Friday the 13th takes the number 7 spot. Now I always found this remake to be entertaining despite the flaws. Sure, the story is a little mediocre, some of the characters really don't stand out, but at least the acting is good here. I definitely had liked the characters of Jenna, Clay, Whitney, plus the character Trent, even though I didn't like him because he was so mean to everybody, at least he gets his comeuppance near the end of this film. And I will say that the kills are very brutal. This is probably one of the most menacing Jasons portrayed on screen. And not just that though, but I definitely thought the music fit the vibe of this really well. Not one of the best horror films from the late 2000s. There are some that comes to mind that are far better than this, but at least it's not an outright bore fest either. Coming in at number 6 is Jason X. The concept of putting Jason Voorhees in space always sounded absurd even back then, but I will say I consider this a guilty pleasure. At least this film is entertaining despite the goofy moments. It doesn't take itself too seriously, which actually makes this a worthwhile cinematic experience. The look of Uber Jason looks cool, and while some of the characters really ain't nothing special to write home about, there are action scenes that stand out in the third act, and while this film isn't that memorable compared to the other movies higher on this list, it still provides an interesting thrill ride. Freddy vs. Jason comes in at number 5. This one right here, it was a fanboy's dream to see these two iconic horror villains face off against each other. Too bad the human characters are not that interesting. It's some of the worst acting when it comes to horror movies, but at least that infight between Freddy and Jason is well worth it. On an entertainment scale though, it's pretty high on the list, and despite the issues that this film has, it's still being talked about even more than 20 years later. At the number 4 spot is Friday the 13th Part 2. I personally always liked this over the years. The characters are likable, the story is decent, and the acting is pretty good. Definitely one of the most memorable horror films of the early 1980s. The franchise brought in adult Jason Voorhees, plus the character Jenny is brave and very intelligent as well. Is this movie perfect? Absolutely not, but it sure is entertaining, and the great thing about it is that it's less than 90 minutes, so it never drags on too long. Coming in at number 3 is the original Friday the 13th, where it all began. Despite how cheesy this one is more than 4 decades later, it is a groundbreaking slasher film during the time when it did came out. The characters are interesting, especially Alice. And then there was Pamela Voorhees being the killer at the end, which I honestly thought that if she was introduced earlier in the movie, then it would have probably worked out better because it would have been more of a shock. Quite a standout in the horror genre, and also considered one of the best horror movies of that decade as well. Coming in at number 2 is Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter. Without question, one of the highest points in the franchise. The introduction of Tommy Jarvis, who is a cool character. He is a kid that likes to make monster masks, but when he comes across the menace known as Jason, he is very brave, being the one to kill Jason in his reign of terror at least for a couple of years. The music is enjoyable, the acting is well done, and there's quite a few tense moments, especially in the last 10 minutes. Certainly a great horror film is alright, and it still holds up pretty well even after all these years later. And at the number 1 spot is Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. A lot of people would also consider this the best entry in the franchise. The story is great, the characters are interesting, and even Sheriff Mike, who acted harshly towards Tommy, he went out a badass. Even though Mike knew he was no match for Jason, he still took him on toe-to-toe. And even if he lost in the end, he did to try to keep Jason away from his daughter, so he has my respect. Jason becoming supernatural would end up becoming the character trope going forward. The acting is good, the story is well thought out, and unfortunately this also would end up being the last time we will see Tommy Jarvis. When it comes down to it, this is a very entertaining horror film, and quite frankly, I never had a major issue with this movie either. And well, there you have it. That is all 12 Friday the 13th movies ranked from worst to best. Now, my list isn't the right list, but it is my opinion. So I want you guys to go down below in the comment section and let me know how would you rank this franchise. All right, this is Slim Guy 172 saying, peace out.